All right. Hello and welcome to the Coaches Corner, brought to you by the Endurance Lab, where you can join the coaches live and unscripted as they recap the week and answer your questions from the forum. My name's Jason Flores, one of the Endurance Lab coaches, and I'm joined by coaches Taya Freestead, Ian Murray, Mitch Dingerman, and our nutritional therapist, Andrea Cullen. Good morning, coaches.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So just a reminder, everyone, that we are live on several different platforms today. So what you see is what you hear today, and it is raw, unedited commentary from our coaches. This also gives you a chance to be part of the show by asking your questions, to jump on live and be part of your show. Our show. Your show. All right. Here we go. All right. We're going to go straight down. We're going to pass it on straight over to Taya. Taya's getting ready for a pretty big trip. It's really exciting coming up in the next week or so, and I wanted her to share a couple tips here as for those that are traveling during this winter season. So Taya, good morning, and let's hear what you got.
Hello, thanks. So thinking about traveling and training, and touch on a couple of points when you are traveling either for a holiday and you're not going to be training, you're not going to be on your bike, but a couple of things to keep in mind, and also as you get back into training, or if you are traveling for training. So I have traveled extensively for work in the past. I don't even want to mention how many years, long flights, short flights, etc. And the trip that I'm going on this week is going to be for a vacation, and I'm not taking my bike with me, but I'll be doing some running, some hiking, and some other things. But a couple of things to keep in mind that I have found over the years that are very helpful, and especially for athletes. So thinking about, everybody knows when you go to a different place, the overall feeling after a long trip, either a car ride or a flight, is you feel jet lagged, you feel dehydrated, you have some lack of sleep, either from the preparation for the flight or during the flight. So you just have that overall feeling of not being yourself and being fatigued overall. So this is something you really have to keep in mind and try to minimize before and during your trip. And also after, as you get back into training, respect the fact that your body still needs some time to settle down before you jump into training again. So a couple of tips here. Before a long trip or a flight, sleep well the days before if you can. Get some extra sleep so that you are well rested. Start hydrating just like you would for an event before your trip, especially if you're going to be flying for a couple of hours. It's just so easy to get dehydrated at airports, on the flight itself. You're just off your routine. You're not eating the same way. You're not drinking the same way. So keeping that in mind and make a conscious effort to hydrate before the trip. You start 2 days before and then during the trip as well. Bring your water bottle. That's what I do. And a lot of airports these days have the water refill fountains, so you can just refill your water bottle, and there you go. So the other thing is eating well before your flight. Make sure you eat something that is nutritious, also that has quite a bit of protein to hold you up. Andrea might have a couple of other tips here, because as we know, food at airports is a little bit of a gamble, and also food on the airplane is something that might not sit well, especially if you're an athlete. You're used to paying attention to everything that you eat. So make sure you have, have that good meal.
Or also, as you're like in a different country and you're on a different airline,
Exactly.
and you get the real traditional food.
That's right. Yep, that can all add up and be tricky. So I think it would be fun to get a couple of examples of things that we might bring on board, and I'll do a round table here of things that you might bring food with you also. Yeah. So eat well before the flight, get on that flight, and then have some food for the airport, have some food for the flight, something that is going to pass through security. Don't bring just your protein powder in a baggie, right? Like the white powder in a little bag. That will get you in trouble.
Your white creatine powder.
That's right.
Packed tightly in a brick.
Me and El Chapo, we travel together.
Yeah, or the herbs,
mirror.
That Andrea might recommend that you take. Don't bring those in dry form in a little baggie either.
Rolled up in little pieces of paper.
Right.
Mushrooms.
Bring
You
my,
may well laugh. but
Bring
it's
my
an apple.
portables and wrap in foil. Yeah.
It's an apple that got me in the most trouble once.
What?
And yeah, so I'm
An apple.
gluten free, and I always have somewhere along the line they're gonna forget that I asked for a gluten free meal. So I'll always bring like some fruit with me. And I was in Shannon, and we were flying to the States, and I had an apple, and the security lady stopped me, and she said, I said, is it okay if I bring my apple, please? And she's like, no, it has to be
Next.
chopped up. and I went,
You're
seriously?
like, oh, here, let me pull out my big knife.
So I
our
said,
test.
seriously? And she said, if you continue with that attitude, you're not getting on this plane. So I was like,
What?
okay. But yeah. So internationally, bringing fruit or anything that may have touched soil can be a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's actually, I probably had some powdered creatine, and that was all right, but I didn't tell her.
So actually on that is an important note. So if you're thinking of bringing like trail mix and things like that, check, because if you bring that stuff to Chile, you ain't getting in.
Yeah.
Oh.
And poppy seeds, poppy
Yeah,
seeds,
anything
and
with seeds in it.
like dry, yeah.
Yeah. So just check where you're going. I mean, if you're going to Iowa, you're pretty much whatever. If you're flying from California to Iowa, but if you're going to a different country, it's kind of a big deal.
Or you just make sure you consume the stuff on the plane. So you bring it for the plane ride. Then you get, nuts are a great thing to bring because they're easy and they're satisfying. And so you can eat that with even a little bag. I used to do a little bag with nuts and a little bit of turkey jerky. So that I get some salt, protein, and the fat there. But but then bars are easy. I know bars can be tricky because they can have so many ingredients that are not necessarily what you want in them, but they're easy and they're probably better than the crackers they're going to toss to you, on the flight. So
on that, I have two little stories for you. One, when I flew to Australia from Dominican Republic, it was 28 hours of flying. It was pretty awesome. But I brought some of I think they're Bob's Red. No, it's the Kodiak cakes. I bought one of those, and
Nice.
a Bob's Red Mill oatmeal thing, so I could just get some hot water from the folks on the plane there. And so I had my food with me, so I didn't have to rely on the airplane food.
Mhm.
And I brought my own tea, so it could help me sleep. I brought my own electrolyte powder type stuff, so I had all of that on the plane as I was leading into the race.
You haven't read the studies on airplane water, have you?
Oh my gosh.
oh no.
Yeah.
Dude, roll.
Oh, you've been in the field. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I swam in the lake at Ironman, Texas. I'm good with whatever is there.
That's probably true.
But then the other
Go ahead, Ian.
No, so the other one is I had to go when I was living in Chile on a trip for 10 days on a Chilean Navy boat. And I had no idea what they were going to serve for food in the mornings. And I was still working out because they had a stationary bike on there and a treadmill and a little gym. So I was doing my workouts, getting ready for a race a few weeks later. And I literally brought most of my food with me. I brought my own cereal. So I would roll into the officer's mess area in the morning with my French press with the coffee in it and just tell them to put hot water. So I didn't have to drink that
Nice.
Nescafe crap.
Nice.
And then I'd say, okay, I need a bowl, and I'd get a bowl and I'd pour my Cheerios in there. And because they would serve us like one small piece of marraqueta, or like a biscuit type thing with like 2 pieces of turkey and a piece of cheese. And like, this is breakfast. I was like, breakfast for who? This is pre-breakfast snack.
I bring everything. I bring a lot of food on my luggage, even for when I'm there, and then for the flight, and then for the kids too.
Yeah.
And then my plan for an overnight flight, which is what I'm going to have on Thursday, is and I think this comes from traveling so much. I'm used to sleeping on flights, and I'm able to sleep 7+ hours even in coach.
Wow.
Yeah, but
She's
it's
a
all
yogi too.
no,
So.
it's all meditation, yoga. You mentioned yoga. It is all part of that meditation and getting your body in that state.
I thought you said medication.
No, meditation.
That's where I come in next.
Well, yeah, and I'll talk about that here after Taylor.
Okay.
Let's talk about meditation.
No, it's meditation in my case, and earplugs. So earplugs,
Nice.
and I cover my eyes, and I'm passed out. But the key for me to do that is I eat well before the flight. It's an overnight flight, so I have my dinner. Then I get on a flight, and as soon as the plane takes off, that I'm able to recline a little bit, I'm out. So falling asleep before they come over, before they come over to serve the meal of the evening. That's the key. Yeah. Because if you wait until after, then it's too late. Then you're sort of out of your sleeping time. So falling asleep beforehand, chances are you're going to be in deeper sleep as they're going through. And I rarely even hear anything. And that's how I do it. But then, good to stand up, walk around. Athletes are more prone to blood clots than other sedentary people. It has to do with low blood pressure, right? We don't need that. Our heart rate is lower, so with that, you're sitting for a long period of time. So the recommendation is to wear compression socks during your flight, and just drink lots of water, walk around. And I would say avoid alcohol too, because even though that might seem like it's going to help you fall asleep, the quality of your sleep is not going to be the same. You're going to get dehydrated. And that's my recommendation, despite the nodding heads over there.
Yeah, so when I flew to China a couple of years ago, I left it like in the middle of the day and didn't plan ahead thinking about how much I needed to adjust my morning schedule so that I could actually sleep, right? Because I was completely flipping my sleep schedule by 12, 13 hours. And my goal was to sleep a lot on the airplane. Well, I had my morning coffee. I got to the airport. My habit and my ritual of flying, I'm always grabbing a coffee on the way to the gate. So I had another coffee. I had a lunch, right, because it was lunchtime. And then after a couple hours of watching TV or Netflix, I wanted to sleep. No, I mean, I had some prescriptions for some things that were around the house. That didn't work. 2 or 3 glasses of wine didn't work. Finally, a couple Benadryl around like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and I finally slept. But no, it was, and I guarantee it was all that I didn't really adjust that morning and didn't really adjust my sleep the night before to try to find a way to make myself tired.
So one of the things I like to do is I have my blue light blocking glasses. As soon as I clear security, I pop those bad boys on because the airports are really known for fluorescent, bright blue
it's a great
lights.
idea.
And then when I get on the plane, especially if it's an overnight, if it's a regular daytime flight, I still leave them on because the side light kind of messes with you because you have a disproportionate light around you. And then, but if it's an overnight flight, I switch over to the red lens glasses that I have, and that just 30 minutes of that, and I'm unconscious.
Yeah, and you mentioned the movies, Mitch. I don't even watch anything for that. Also, for that reason, on an overnight flight, no screen. I will read a book for a couple minutes, but
the movie doesn't bother me. I put my glasses on.
Boy, we are fun people to travel with. We've got compression pants on, dry fit shirts so you don't sweat. You've got your orange glasses on. You've got your noise canceling headphones. You got a bag full of protein bars, a rollie full of creatine powder.
When my poor nephew flew with us to Denmark, it was like Ruby and I are like that. We're like, get on the plane and get to sleep type people. My poor nephew is like, you people suck.
Like, what's going on? Oh, I just picture Taya's family just showing up at the house, and then both Drew and Taya secretly packed a bike and a trainer in their carry-on.
Right.
They're like,
you got the couplings on the bike. It's folded in half in the luggage.
It's like, oh wow, look at this! I didn't even know I had it.
Oh my god, what are we gonna do?
And on these long travel days too, don't forget you can always. And Taya had my friend Ken on Chat and Chill one day. He's got a whole book about exercising in airports, and he's got some really good stuff in there. He goes a little overboard for me about how much he's willing to do.
That must be pretty extreme.
That must be pretty extreme.
Yeah.
The listeners out there can look at that podcast. And under the Endurance Lab, it's there.
Yeah, he's got definitely some really good tips, and even here in DC, they did a profile on him in the airport, and he's definitely got some good things in there to do. And they're small things, and I know Jason's done it with Rylan too, just throwing him on his back and doing some squats. I would say Jason did it with push-ups. We know, Jason can't do push-ups with Rylan on his back, so No, but there's a lot of things you can do too. You don't need to just be sitting on your butt in the terminal or sitting in the lounge getting hammered. Although that's fun, it's not very productive.
Yeah.
So a couple of things just to close off the cycle here. So the before, we talked about before, during, and I'll talk a little bit about after. And then Andrea has been pretty quiet there, so maybe she'll have a couple of things to comment on our comments. But after you arrive, try to adjust to the local schedule as soon as you can. If you are traveling east and let's say 4+ time zones, and you arrive early in the morning, you can take a short nap, let's say in the morning, but no more than an hour, just to kind of hold you up. The key is to, if you can, don't even sleep. Just wait until that evening and go to sleep that evening. And then one thing that I used to do a lot when traveling 6+ time zones east was take melatonin the first night and the second night. So I would take melatonin an hour before it was bedtime. I would stay up and go to bed. And then the next day I was so fresh like a daisy at meetings. People would look at me puzzled. How can she be feeling so good? So that worked for me. Then if you are going to train and you're at your destination, give it a day or two of low intensity training to get your body accustomed to the new environment, to the new food, to the new time zone. Avoid jumping right back into those hard workouts. That also works when you come back home. So you've been off the bike, let's say for a couple of days a week plus, and you're so eager to get back to it, you go to that first intensity workout that you see on your schedule. Avoid doing that. Just take it easy for the first day or two. You're really trying to ground yourself, literally ground yourself to the place that you're at, your destination, and then you get into it. Yoga is a good thing to do. A little bit of especially hip stretches are excellent for grounding to the new location, but also for all that sitting during the trip. Do some stretching. That's typically a good activity, a walk, or a very easy spin.
Yeah, just not jumping back into things, just like trying to get back to your routine when you get back, or trying to make unless you're there for training, I guess, but trying not to make your vacation all working out either.
Yeah.
What? That is the vacation.
Yeah.
I mean, you always know I'm going to respond with like a cheeseburger or something like that. So I'm just going to sit in your gut and just, bleh. No, but you do want to, I kind of look at eating the day before, the day of travel or the night before early morning travel. I kind of treat it almost like eating before race morning. I don't want to do anything that's going to give my stomach any issues.
Yeah, that's my concern.
Look, I mean, I've done a lot of things outside in the field, but airplane bathrooms are pretty nasty. So I don't really want to be also in the actual bathroom on the airplane during turbulence.
Yeah, I think airplanes in general are really nasty. I mean, I wipe down everything, and I think that's actually a really good practice.
Yeah, me too.
You bring bleach wipes, and
Yep.
But Andrea, you were maybe talking. Is there anything like should I eat more carbs the day before? I mean, is there any thoughts on that, or?
I know when you get the other side, they say it's better to eat protein in the morning and carbs in the evening to help regulate serotonin production and sleep. I can't tolerate melatonin even at the low. There's controversy over the dose of melatonin. Mm-hmm. Some people say very, very low, others like 0.5, and others say 5. But I find it wipes me out. So I would kind of knock myself out with maybe more carbohydrates the other side. I find travel quite difficult because there's so many people. I get a little bit hyperstimulated, so I get really, really exhausted. So I find knocking out 1 sense for me helps. I'll often close my eyes for as much of the journey as possible, even if I'm not necessarily sleeping. In fact, I'll do the same in a car when I'm not driving.
So when I'm Tesla, you're okay.
So when I'm in airports, I'll go and find the quiet spots. And instead of sort of eating main meals, I kind of will nibble a lot of the way, and I'll bring my snacks, and I think that's a boredom thing as well. It just gives you something to do every couple of hours, and just try not to have too much coffee. I don't eat gluten, so I have to make sure that I have something with me. And the air flight meals, some of them are good for gluten-free, but they automatically assume you don't eat butter, so they'll give you crappy margarine, and they'll give you, really weird stuff that they think you have intolerances to as well. They're probably trying to hit everyone with it. So sometimes it's a lot of fake food. So therefore it's handy, but just being mindful of where you're going. And if I have to clear customs for the States here, I'm limited, because some places allow you to clear before you get on the plane to America. They're going to take your apples and your dried fruit. But generally I'll just kind of be like, please, I'm celiac.
So
and
the other answer to that, Andrea? The answer to that is fly American Airlines, and you don't have to worry about getting food.
Yeah. You can have some long flights with no food that doesn't happen in Europe as much. The other thing was, when you get to your destination, I find my heart rate is really sensitive to how fatigued I am. And I'll know I've traveled because my heart rate will be in the low 40s when I get there, as opposed to the around 50. And I take that as my indication for you're wiped out, tired, because it's obviously been my cardiovascular system has been messed up. So heart rate could be an interesting one for people to look at. I don't know about heart rate variability. There's so many mixed reports on how accurate people are finding it, but heart rate variability should be the one that's really helpful to gauge how you've recovered from long distance. So
some really great tips on fueling for your travel there. So if you have any questions about some of the tips we have, go back, rewind the podcast here or the video, and you can go back to the beginning of that and grab that. Don't forget to check out that other podcast that we had with another guest talking about the different things that you can work out inside terminals. And if they're difficult for Ian, you know that they're going to be probably pretty challenging. So
the workouts aren't hard. Workouts aren't hard. I'm not a big fan of getting all sweaty in the middle of the year.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like doing sprints between terminals.
In the terminal, yeah.
Up and down. So all right, so just shifting gears here and just continuing the theme of talking about fueling. We wanted to talk a little bit about, or at least revisit fueling for longer races and rides, or Fondos specifically. I did talk about last week about doing a Fondo that I had over the weekend, and then conversely talking about short races. On our notes, we have short races with hand-ups and long races with rest stops is what the topic's called. So I guess I'll start with my experience. It was kind of conflicted as far as fueling for the Fondos. I did a 100-mile ride over on Saturday, and I did a lot of the planning went into kind of bringing to make sure I had things that I knew that I could consume, because I knew that a lot of the rest stops were just going to have general fruits and this sort of thing that I may not be able to take in. I knew that they might have something that I'd be able to take down kind of at different rest stops. But the problem was that I had enough for about 4 or 5 hours on the bike. The problem was to stop or not. And I know Taya's done a pretty long ride. I think it was a year ago and some change, right? And if I remember, I was trying to remember kind of what she said and that sort of thing about you had to kind of choose when to stop and when to go. Nobody was stopping on this group. And it was like, I was trying to stay with like the first third, and like it would just whittle down. And then it was kind of really, really challenging. So on one end, I was really happy that I finished strong, and I felt strong for all the segments that were there, and we could talk about that in a different part of the time segments. And fueling was fine, but like staying with the group, I don't know where these guys stopped, and I know some of the guys, and there were people from mile 0 that had nothing but their phone and like a pump and a tire for 100 miles. I'm like, where are you gonna eat? Where are you stopping? So I haven't caught up with these guys and haven't, because they are on my local ride too. But that was an interesting part, was like choosing when to stop to get stuff, because I knew you needed water, because the stops were either 30 miles or 20 some odd miles, so you had to stop for water unless you weren't drinking, and so then you'd lose pace, you'd lose like your where you were at and that sort of thing. So I think the challenge is trying to choosing when to stop, and if you in fact are going to carry water and fuel for 100 miles. I don't know what your guys' experiences are with that length, you know.
You can't do hydration for that long.
You can
probably do unless you're carrying so much on you for 3 hours or 4, like a Camelback and bottles.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a bottle an hour, and that's how you go about it.
Mm-hmm.
Did they have a pocket full of gels, Jason?
Yeah, so I mixed it between bars and gels, and then when I did start stopping, I'd grab some other bars or something kind of savory because that's stuff I wasn't carrying, and then I had like two bailout gels of like, oh man, it was amazing. There's an SIS gel that has 150 milligrams of caffeine. I took it.
I'm gonna look that one up right now.
Yeah. But see, you have to save those for the last hour and a half to 2 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like at hour 4, and I was like, I popped it. Man, I was awake till like midnight that night. But like
you're just not having enough caffeine. You just need to eat more caffeine during the day.
And I had a lot before.
Yeah, it's 150 milligrams. That's called like 9 a.m., man.
Yeah, I did in the morning.
He could be a slow detoxifier. There are different caffeine sensitivities.
So I think
you can't train it.
Right. So in the morning, I put in about 230 because that's what that's what's in Endurance 360. And I know Andrea was interested in what I had the morning of. So I had like about a cup of potatoes, like 2 hours, about 2 hours plus before, with honey drizzled over it just to start. And then kind of just a hydration before the start. It started out super slow, and for the first 15 or 20, we actually had so we got to like the foothills where there wasn't as many cars. We actually had escort, so it was so nice to run 50 lights in the cities that we normally have to stop at every light. We had police just stop every single light as long as you were with the front group. So we had like 20 to 25 miles of just like blowing every light, and then once we got to the foothills, it was just kind of a headed up to the first climb and the first rest stop. So
no protein, Jason, before? Just the potatoes?
Yeah, I do well with the just the carbohydrates before, and I take a little bit during, depending on the bars. I'll take protein kind of a little bit during, but not a lot before. Do you guys feel like protein before on a long ride when you know that you're going to go 4 hours has usefulness even at the very beginning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what you could do, Jason, if you don't like taking protein on board, is get some fat in with the potatoes, because you had the slower starchy carbs and you had the honey, but if you added in some fat, that might level out that carb release for the initial start. Just a bit of butter or coconut, maybe. It's just an idea. It won't change your tolerance in your tummy or anything.
Yeah.
You can also just throw some scramble an egg and throw it in there too.
Yeah, as long as it's early enough. I know the guys that, the stories we hear of the guys doing the, the Coda race or whatever, they're up like 3 or 4 hours before, and it was a moderate start. It was at 7, but I mean, waking up at 3 or 4 like we normally do.
7's early or late, man.
Late. That's what I mean. And so, that would be, waking up 3 or 4 hours and doing a full meal. So I was kind of in the middle of that, trying to get some rest in between. But yeah, that was kind of my experience. So then I was torn. Like, do I want to continue trying to do hundreds and trying to deal with that, or do a race like 100K where I could actually have 3 bottles and enough fuel for 3 hours and some change, and just never have to stop and be able to race it versus ride it, and have to stop and then lose groups for whatever reason of everybody being macho and like not wanting to stop and not drink and dehydrate and like be sick after the race, So
I mean, but that's where you have to plan with them to see who wants to do what. And if you just get your group of 4, 5, 6 riders, you don't worry about the group, because 6 riders you can do a significant amount of work together.
That's true.
With 6 riders for 100 miles.
Because when we did get together, as the group kind of whittled down, we got into groups. The groups were large because it was like over 1,000 riders. Yeah. So the front group was like 100 plus of like the guys locally. And then as it whittles down, we managed a group of like 20 or 30. But then you get into a place where like we're like on the front and we're making this pace, and we're like, oh man, we need to get off the top. And off the front, we're like headed into miles 60 to 80, and we were on, and I'm like trying to tell the guys that I'm off the front, we got to get off, we can't do this for 10, 15 miles at a time, and everyone's just sucking wheels, and so
15-mile pull.
Yeah, it's like, come on, we gotta get. I mean, it's our pace, but then like you can easily get out of that zone that's comfortable where you can easily jump behind wheels. You hear people freewheeling, you got to get off, So I was like, we got to get off the front. So, but anyways, and then my Garmin died because I left the back screen on. So mile 90, it died. Ian, I know it died. And then so the last like 10 miles, I'm like trying to follow the arrows. So I stop at. I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna stop at 90 because there is a stop at 85, and then like 92 because there is climbs all in between there. And then I'm like, crap, I have to stop because I need to take a picture of like the final 10 miles. So luckily there was someone there with the route sheet. I took a picture of that. So the final 10 miles, I have like my phone trying to get through the final 10 miles. But either way, it was fun. My son was at the finish line ringing the cowbell. It made me really happy. And it was a local race for the charities and the chamber that I am at. So it was a really great cause. So, but moving over to short races, other than beer, what are you drinking on the laps at your cyclocross races today?
Yeah, the beauty of short races is you don't need anything on board, right? On your bike anyway, or your pockets. You just need to have whatever you need in your body beforehand. That's it. So the races, the ones that I'm going to now are midday. So it's a little late for me. I don't like that midday because what do you do the morning of?
Yeah,
I tend to
in your wheels
take your trains.
Right. I tend to be very energetic in the morning, and so I'm going to start doing things around the house, and I'll get tired.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Midday is hard, also for nutrition because it's lunchtime. So what I do is the day of the race, I wake up and I have a bowl of oatmeal with some almond butter mixed in. And then 2.5 to 3 hours later, which is still 2 hours before the race,
Wow.
I'll have a cup of rice with 2 eggs in there.
Nice.
And that's it. And then I'm done. And so then before the race, I'll just have a gel with some caffeine and do the race. I don't need... and I'm hydrating in the morning, right? The morning of, because that's the other thing. It's a 45-minute race, but I won't be having any bottles on board. Otherwise, I'll never be able to shoulder my bike. And also because it's short, just go. And so I hydrate the morning of and the 2 hours before I'm drinking electrolytes. I'm drinking my bottle that I would have otherwise had during a ride. I'll drink beforehand, and then I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
45 minutes, right, is the length of your races right now? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian, your experience is the same with the races you're doing out there?
Yeah, I do the same thing. You're not taking anything on board. And in cyclocross, really, there's nowhere to drink.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
You're going either crazy hard or you're
Running with your bike.
Tight turns or running with your bike. So and you're just basically doing a hard threshold test. Just VO2 on and off is all you're doing, back and forth.
Yeah.
So, you definitely don't have it, but you gotta be prepped for it, going into it.
And the key is eat early enough, 2 hours at least, so you can have full digestion, but you're not hungry again before. And during the race is funny. Yeah. During the race is funny because people have the hand ups, like Jason was saying. All the heckling that goes on around the course, and there's cupcakes, there's food, there's mini waffles, there's
what about donuts? You got donuts?
Donuts are
didn't
popular
get donuts here. But tequila, people would be like, here's your electrolytes.
All right, I'm really missing the cyclocross thing. I gotta find some races for next year.
I remember.
Hey, have you? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would imagine that some people aren't taking the breakfast and the meal before, and on a 45-minute blaming nutrition and all sorts of funny things. Have you come across that? Or people, do they seem to know what they're doing with their fueling?
We don't talk to people in the back of the pack.
Yeah.
There's no talking during the race at all. But there's some talk in the tent. And what I find is the same people who race crits are out there racing cross.
Yeah.
And so they've got their system down, it seems like. And that's the other thing. If you're in a tent with other people, chances are these people have been racing for a while. Mm-hmm. So it's hard. You don't hear much of the things that people who are new to these kinds of races would do. But I see everybody, it's amazing, have their own Tupperware with food.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to bring their food. It's remarkable.
Organized.
Very organized. They have their coolers. They have their food in there. They have their beer.
And type A people.
And people are racing typically more than one race too.
Yeah, that's
so
the
they
key.
race
That's
once,
it.
then they eat in between, then they race again. Now I've seen this one lady before my race on Sunday. She had a big container. It was not big, but medium container. And it was a mix of kale with quinoa with cranberries.
In between races, I feel like
that was
much
20
fiber.
minutes. No, that was 20 minutes before the race.
That
That is just going to pull, water from your muscles into your stomach, and you're not even digesting that before the race. And I passed her pretty quickly. I mean, she wasn't going very fast.
How's your kale?
Yeah, if there was only a little bit of kale and you had quite a lot of cranberries and not too much quinoa, you would manage. But I do have a question for you about after the race. Like, this is high intensity. Your hormonal system, your adrenal system is on fire. Are you noticing a change in appetite afterwards where you're looking for a lot of carbohydrate, or massive hunger hitting an hour or two later, or compared to the other races where the intensity isn't quite so high? Have you noticed a difference?
Yes. So these very, very intense races will get me. I have to have carbs more than I typically do. So it's worrisome to me, because my rational brain is looking at my numbers and saying, you don't need that many carbs.
Yeah.
But my body's saying, carbs right now, more carbs. So I just give in the day of. I figured I better eat what I need.
Listen to your body, yeah.
Right. And but right after, as soon as I get off the bike, I have my my mix, my post recovery drink mix, which is I do 24 grams of whey protein with 2 scoops of CarboPro, and that's because I'm out there in the middle of nowhere. There's I don't bring food. I just bring that because that's the other thing. I have a backpack, right? So I park somewhere, and then I ride my bike with a backpack and everything I need in my backpack: clothing, food, drinks, everything.
Where's your Sherpa?
Your Sherpa.
Yeah, exactly. I need a Sherpa.
Isn't that right? Our kids are for, right? After the age of 10, that's what we could use our kids for.
Like we said, Taya's husband really isn't into the whole exercise thing.
Yeah, Drew's not.
I'd be so curious if there's any nutters doing keto for this type of race, because you were just not.
They're the same people who wear basketball shorts over their cycling kit because they're afraid to be in spandex.
I doubt it. I think that's
not going to work.
I actually think cyclocross people are pretty laid back for the most part. Yeah. But unless you're looking at the Cats 1 and 2, though, I mean, that's a little different.
The group I hang out with, their post race drink is PBR.
Nice. Someone's dancing at Mitch's house up there.
Yeah, I think my 8-year-old is up. I hear dogs. I hate it.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right, so we've gone through a little bit of fueling. We did want to touch a little bit about detraining. It is winter months. We're in cyclocross season, the end of Fondos season. But a little bit of, there was an article that came across in our forums talking a little bit about detraining and kind of opening up some of those myths of kind of the timelines that you're looking at if you are going to take some time off. So Andrea, what were the conversation kind of around, and what kind of questions did it bring up in the forum?
It's a really good article, so I definitely would read that to get a lot of insight into what's going on in your body. Yeah. What jumped out at me is that depending on our reasons for stopping will probably influence a little bit how we detrain. And that's only been from my own observation, where I was sick for 2 months. And as I come back now, I can run for an hour, I can bike for an hour. The cardiovascular system, the zones have probably changed, and it's a little bit harder, but it's my strength that I noticed has gone down a lot. In my power on the bike, the zones, the way you go into your Training Peaks app and you can see, and like they've totally gone opposite. Power in the pool, how much strength you lose for holding your core in the right position for optimal technique. I found that quite interesting. So I guess it's sitting back, if you have taken that time, and asking yourself, well, what's actually happened in my body, and what do I need to rebuild as I get back into it? And ideally, we shouldn't really be letting ourselves detrain too much. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes we get sick, and we need to give all our energy to healing, which instead of trying to train mediocrely and getting even sicker and not really healing and that chronic fatigue window that you see people get stuck in all of the time. But for others of us, it's simply that we need a break. And then I think cross-training and fun and doing different things are really, really important. But there's no shadow of a doubt, we lose that fitness, we lose that top end, we lose that strength, we lose the cardiovascular adaptations that have happened as a result of our training. And I think most of us enjoy feeling fit, so we don't want to lose that at all, because it sucks trying to get it all back again.
Yeah. But I think the myth or the idea in this article was to understand what kind of goes away more quickly and more slowly. And so the pillars or the foundation that a lot of us talk about here with Endurance Lab is making sure that aerobic base is strong, and building that over a course of time, over seasons. And that's the part that lasts the longest. And then it goes into talk about how quickly you can lose, let's say, your anaerobic fitness, and that sort of thing. But oppositely, you can easily ramp someone up with, 7 to 8 workouts before a race to get that anaerobic system up. And that's why so many riders are so quick to go to the quick fix of high intensity for a short period of time, but it's not sustainable. And as coaches, we all know that. But to have it either spread out or focused towards the end of a build is where you can get the most fitness, and you let that kind of go, but always going back to the aerobic base and coming back up and building it that way.
Yeah, this is one of my pet peeves is so often you have an athlete, they miss a workout or 2 or 3, and it's the end of the world, and they're trying to stack workouts on top of each other. They're sick for 4 days. It's the end of the year, end of their life, the season's shot. I mean, they should read this article. I mean, my favorite comment was, if you miss 2 or 3 days, or the first 3 days that you don't work out, you're actually in a better spot than you were when you stopped working out. And it's not until a full week goes by that you actually start to see an impact in your fitness in some way. And like you said, you can get that back so quick. And it's building that base, and it's not fretting over the small things. It's trying to be consistent, but recognizing that life happens and it's not over after 2 or 3 days or even a week.
Yeah, and I mentioned, I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, that study that showed that well-trained athletes can keep their fitness at the level that they're at for 2 weeks with 50% of the intensity and 50% of the volume. So that just gives you some good perspective there. But we communicate very often amongst ourselves, right? And we've been seeing Andrea's journey through the past couple of months with what she went through in being patient with herself and being patient, especially and kind when coming back to training. And this is something, Andrea, that I think is so remarkable that it's hard for people to wrap their heads around. And I think you've been doing a fantastic job, and getting back to it. So tell us a little bit about the last couple of weeks. How did you first get back then into training?
Well, there was one thing I was aware of when I was sick, and that's that I could have done yoga and I could have done some strength, and my mind just didn't want to. I needed a break. I have been training really hard for the last 4 years anyway, so the strength loss, some of it's my fault, some of it's just general inflammation in the body, lost a lot of weight really quick. That came back up, but you're not going to put back muscle on without doing a bit of work. So now that I'm back, I am being patient and I'm trying to make it fun. And if one thing that was interesting and I was talking to the coaches about was how my ability to maintain a higher cadence on the bike. So I wasn't really worried about power. That's going to go, but just getting the leg cadence up. Now I did it. So I've been working on that. And as Thea advised, today I did 5 minutes and sections with 5 minutes, not worrying about it. Didn't worry about power, just focused on cadence. And I noticed that it's starting to come back. So that's week 2. Power is starting to come back quickly because I was doing maybe good quality 30, 40, up to 50. I was just raising by 10 minutes each time I was on the bike what I was doing. And the strength is starting to improve. And instead of making myself do a long bike ride on the trainer, I'm getting out on my mountain bike. And I had a great ride at the weekend. It was over 2 hours. There was some really, really steep hills. But it's not work when you're trying to get up the hill. It's just fun. And you're going to fall off if you stop. So you got to keep going. So I'm making that work was fun. It didn't matter. I didn't know what my powers were. And I feel that will add to my, my fitness as well. With the swimming, I really noticed a difference in my ability. Like, I have pretty good technique and I would hold myself up pretty well. And instead of just trying to get myself back into the distances I was doing, I would do specific work until I fatigued and stop. Because there's no point when your form goes. I'm using the pull buoy quite a lot to hold my form so that my arm technique, so I'm straight back close to pace. But I know that take that pull buoy away and my form's going to drop. So I'm working on getting rid of the pull buoy, getting strong, using paddles, and increasing the swim time without anything every swim. Now, Ian, love your feedback on that. For me, it seems to make sense that you want good technique rather than sloppy technique, and to get back into that as fast as possible.
No, that is the key. So what I always try to tell people when we're getting back into swimming is you don't ever worry about speed. You just worry about technique, because speed will come, and you work on building the distance over time. So especially as you start getting into it, you swim to a point where you feel your technique is going, and then you stop. Because if you keep going, if you keep pushing, you just start reinforcing, well, this is easier. It feels better. Because your crappy technique does always feel better, because you're not using as much of the muscle into it. So once you feel that technique is gone, you stop. And you can feel it. You can feel it. You know when it's not there, when you're not feeling the water move over your body. But be careful with the pull buoy, because the pull buoys are the paddles. They are also it's very easy to slip into a slightly off catch with the paddle, where you start torquing your shoulder. So those are great. I do like those quite a bit. You're less likely to have something bad happen with those, because they'll just fall off if you don't have your hand in the right position. But it is still you still can find ways to shirk the good form. So you just have to be very, very cautious. But even if you are using good form, you have to be cautious using the paddles when you're building up, that you just don't put too much strain on the shoulders. Because that is one of the things you'll definitely have. So I like those paddles. I don't like the paddles that are like, giant.
I have these Michael Phelps ones.
Those,
I wouldn't use them for very long at all, if ever. I find they move. You are using here a lot, but I will only use them for maybe 100, 200, and I'll sort of alternate. So I'll go paddle, no paddle. Just the pull. So what I was doing is I'll do 400. I can do 400, no bother. Form is perfect. Then I might do 50s, perfect form. I hope. In my mind, it is.
We need a video.
Then I'll switch.
In your mind, it's form, but everyone else just sees.
Exactly. Drowning. But I know for my watch, I'm not too far off. And then I'll go off the pull buoy and paddle work. I'll always get rid of the paddles as well, and just so you're using your hands.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good. And I use, when I'm getting really into my swimming, once I'm back through an initial base period, I use a lot of paddles, and it helps. It helps create strength. And I was doing sets of, I was doing 8x400 with paddles, and I mean, I would be shattered afterwards. But and the most I've done is 1600 straight with paddles, and I showered like that afterwards.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just brutal. But yeah, paddles are definitely good. But you're right. Form is everything. Technique is everything. If you lose that, then you're just reinforcing bad habits. You're getting really good at swimming poorly.
Yeah. That goes for the bike too, and that goes for at all times on the bike, not just coming back from injury. Once you're in an interval, let's say the standing one that we do a lot, and you see it's a long one, let's say it's 2 minutes, like the one we had in standing in the mud, and you find that your form is gone, then it's better to just sit down and do it seated.
Yeah, at that point. Yeah, I did. There was a couple questions on that, but yeah, form is king, especially for a lot of the workouts we do. We talk about not having to always hit wattages, but the form, whether it be cadence or standing or sitting or low cadence or high cadence, that sort of thing. Those are all keys. But yeah, those all play into factor. So excellent.
So the last one,
yeah, go ahead.
Just quickly on running, you're just slower. So
well,
it's
slow and
just
easy to build the volume.
building your base, and then every second weekend I'll do a longer run or bring in some hills just to get some strength. And I love hill running. And I think my running hasn't suffered too badly because, as Garen says, I'm light, so I'm quite lucky there. Just slower.
You mean starting running again with like 10 to 15 extra pounds on you isn't a good thing?
Yeah, so I'm testing. I just started Ian's strength training beta test, and the first part says to run for 15 minutes, or you could do other things. But I was like, run. What am I supposed to do? So I'm like trying to figure out. I'm like, I'm supposed to walk just a little faster. Like I'm not quite exactly. No,
what's this running business?
Yeah, but it's been good. It's been good. It's been burpees. It's been hard pulls. It's been fun learning some new things, and I almost want to take video because I'm like super beginner, and then Ian's videos are like amazing, and just to see someone who's not lifting a lot of weight and trying to figure out how to do it, I think could be fun. So
form, Jason.
Exactly.
But it comes quick because yesterday I did the one that was for Monday, but Monday I did a 12-mile run instead. But yesterday, so I did the overhead thrusters, and it was interesting that the high pull work that I've done made it so when I went to do the overhead thrusters with the barbell, I had what used to be my clean weight, and I was just able to just bring it right up, and I was like, all right, this ain't too bad.
Yeah.
So it's definitely
huge
you'll
gains
see improvement
initially.
quickly.
And eat more protein.
Yeah.
The protein will help, and you'll get a higher percentage of gain than experienced people.
Yeah, that's from what I understand. All right, so we've got our last topic to hit here, and Mitch's favorite thing, and even on Team ODZ, it's a very favorite, highly ranked thing to do is FTP test. We're not huge fans through the season and through our cycles, but it's always fun to watch, and it's always fun to watch Mitch do an FTP test. Him and Andy, I think, are kind of the top two on our team that we love to watch suffer on FTP
So we actually
tests.
did one together earlier this year.
I do remember that.
And before this week, that was the last FTP test I'd done, and we all know that I had kind of a patchy season, and I woke up on Veterans Day. I had the day off because I work in banking, and I would take it off anyway because I'm a vet. So I woke up and I just said, what the hell? Let's do an FTP test.
And can I just comment here? When for those listeners who don't know this, when they say they did the FTP test together, it probably meant that they're in different different countries. They're in the same platform, right? Training platform, and they're live streaming or co-streaming to make sure.
What's unique is that even on this one we did it together, except I was the only one pedaling because Andy was yelling at me the whole time. But anyway, so I've been cycling, with training plans and somewhat religiously, depending on the year, since say 2007. And we all know the different kinds of FTP tests, right? There's the 20-minute test. There's the 20-minute one where you do the 5-minute clearing effort before. There's a critical power test where you do 20-minute power one day and you do 5-minute power the other day. There's the 2x8-minute test, right, where you do 2 8-minute intervals. That's the last one I'd done earlier in the year with Andy Jenner. And then there's a newer one, which we do have in the endurance lab, and also Trainer Road, I think, is the one who developed this, but it's the ramp test, where you start out and you cycle easy for about 5 minutes.
The ramp test has been around, by the way.
Has it?
Yeah,
okay.
It was.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
No, it wasn't trained. I guess my point is it wasn't trained around.
Yeah, it was a different test before, but the way that you have utilized it for FTP is a little bit different. But go ahead, Mitch. Let's hear the rest of it.
So hey, Trainer Road thinks they invented it. And they're all great guys. I think it's Nate Dunn. He's a great guy. But anyway, so you start out, you cycle easy for 5 minutes, and then it starts ramping up the power every minute by a small amount. And this is the first time I'd ever done it. I had no idea how they did the final calculation. I kind of just jumped in, got my streaming to work during the 5 minutes, had a couple people join me, and started ramping up. Now, one of the comments that I think Andy or Eric Denning, I think maybe it was Eric Denning made was, one, I was talking way too much. It was easy, all right? You start out at a really easy power, and I can actually talk for quite a while before I can't talk anymore. And the other comment was, it's not really hard until the last minute. So what it does is this test takes your top 1 minute power and then takes it to a factor of 0.75% and calculates your FTP off of that. So I had no idea that they even took your top 1 minute power. All I was doing was cycling until I couldn't maintain my power anymore, which is what you're supposed to do. And that last minute all of a sudden just hit me like a 2x4. You can watch the video, it's online somewhere. And I think I was talking until that last minute, and then I think I started making like guttural moans and things like that. So it's actually it's a really neat FTP test. One, because to me psychologically the 20-minute is just really daunting.
Yep.
Even the 2x8, because that second 8 minute, there's so much pacing involved in the 20-minute test and the 8-minute test, because you've got to maintain an even pace. You've got to find that power that you can hit at the beginning and at the end. And this is just completely different because you're just bumping your power by small increments every minute. And then when you can't do it anymore, you can't. What's interesting is, so I knew my FTP earlier in the year was 230. I had no idea where it was. I hadn't tested it. I hadn't really ridden as religiously as I wanted. And I came out pretty much at the same number. I think I came out at like 226, 227. So I was pretty happy that I didn't have a huge deterioration in power, and it felt right. The neat thing too about this is it's more repeatable. I don't think you want to repeat it any more than every 4 to 6 weeks, or however often your training plan calls for. But I actually feel if I went out next Monday, I could do this test again because it's only 20 minutes and it's only a short amount of time at a really peak power.
Yeah, I definitely think that's one of the things if people are looking to kind of gauge their fitness, whether they're coming back or whether they're kind of look at every 8 or 16 weeks. It is something that the people can use. And there was a questions on the live stream about why using FTP tests. It might have been what Mitch's FTP was, but just overall our thoughts on FTP. We typically have riders started an FTP if they feel that they need to bump it. We encourage them to try to give it a little bit of a bump and see how rides feel. But, as coaches, it's always interesting to try things that our athletes may come across so that we have good background and understand like where they're coming from. I've done this test a couple different times. I've administered it live, which is always a fun and interactive time. People love watching the final 2.5 minutes usually of this test, but it's easy until it's not. But one thing for riders who are just new to indoor training that they do like is that it's directed versus having to try to pace. So when I take a rider that's been riding outside, hundreds of miles outside, and they want to try to get themselves sorted out, this is a good way because it tells them exactly what they should be hitting on their power meter until they fail. And then at that point, I can give them at least some gauge of a scale of efforts when they do go out and how to hold and teach them to learn. Have them learn and teach them how to kind of follow them, because there's all of a sudden everyone has power meters, and then I ask them questions and they have no idea. They just look at numbers and they have 1 second power on their Garmin. I'm like, don't you get frustrated watching the numbers? They're like, yeah, they're jumping all over. I'm like, you're watching it every second, and so it's really odd. But everyone has all the tools. But then I think just kind of harnessing and sharpening that knife is important. And for us as coaches, understanding what riders are doing out there. But it's a really great test. More and more people are doing it because of its repeatability, because of its direction. But really, we all know that, the golden factor is either 20 or, truly the 60-minute, man.
Well,
that's
60,
what we need to do. 60-minute test.
40K time trial, right? That's,
and we can. That's a whole new can of worms on the FTP test. And the important thing is having a number to work with so you can set up your training zones.
Yeah, that's all.
And that was my goal.
That's what you need. That's what you need.
Yeah.
It was really, in my mind, to validate. I'd been adjusting down some workouts. I was feeling better, keeping them where they're supposed to be. And it was really validating what's my target and what are my zones, just so that I felt like I was training in the right place.
Right.
I guess the question is what is your goal for March 3rd? That's what we all want to know. What's your
What's March 3rd? What's March 3rd?
So one, I'm not sure if I'd be there, but so my goal, and you know this because you were in the forum. I've got a really weird year planned where I plan to spend my winter cycling and running, and then in April I may shift to a complete run focus until September, because I may try to do my first marathon and see if I can't BQ, which is a complete stretch goal.
Yeah.
Hey, Mitch, You know, I signed up for the marathon after your talk of doing a marathon in September.
You gotta
so
do
we're
it.
both going to be doing the same thing.
All right, you'll hold me to it then. I just have to stay healthy, and that's really the idea around the easy running and cycling all through the winter is getting the legs ready and getting the weight down for a real running push, because I can't run at this weight, the volume I need to run. And I'm not saying I'm heavy, but there's a difference in like a race running weight versus where I am now.
Excellent. So really great chat today about a whole range of topics. You know, we kind of started it with travel and training and kind of the different things and considerations that we could think of as athletes and as coaches. Talked about fueling for Fondos, both longer, shorter races, as well as talking about a little bit of tips on detraining. And then lastly, we talked about kind of the usefulness of the STEP FTP test and kind of how we can use that as a marker to kind of give yourself a place or athletes a place to kind of go from. In our lab, we do have a couple skills that we're working on. Excuse me. A couple are skills in torque, which are to help develop torque. Oh, Taya, I'm going to need your help on this one. I'm losing my voice.
Sure. So this week is a recovery week for our athletes in the lab, and we worked on skills. So we continue to advance skills, and even though it's a recovery week, we take the intensity down, we take the volume down, but we're still advancing our training. So we worked on low and high cadence, transitioning between the two, improving torque and economy on your pedal stroke. So being able to apply more force into your pedals as you have developed some good neuromuscular pathways there. So we've done skills in torque. We've done the 20-40 cadence work. Yep. So again, 20 seconds at a certain cadence, 40 seconds at a different cadence, varying power as well. And then we finish up with cadence and power reverse builds, which is the opposite of the builds that we did a couple of weeks ago. And again, getting progressively harder as you go on, as a ramp, but also varying cadence and power there.
All really good recovery work, recovery week workouts. So just remember, on your recovery week, intensity may be down, but skills and your practice should be up. So really great show today. We lost Ian there at the end, but I think he had an appointment to touch. But I want to thank all the coaches for their time today, for their information, and for sharing their knowledge here with our group. And for you, the listener, I want to thank you for joining us today here in the Coach's Corner. And if it's your first time listening and would like to hear more content from the Endurance Lab, head over to your favorite podcast app and search Endurance Lab, or head to YouTube and search the same. And don't forget to click subscribe. For more information when you can hear when the next lab is, head over to endurancelab.fit, where you can join us to train smart and get results. We'll see everybody next week. We are